When I first became a manager, I was actually terrible at it. Not because I didn't know the work, I actually knew it better than anyone else in the business. And that was exactly the problem. What happened next cost me people, cost me time, and nearly cost me my business. So by the end of this video, I'll share with you the 4 shifts that helped me stop doing the work of 5 people, keep great talent, and ultimately sell my business. If you're new to this channel, my name is Konstantin. I founded 3 companies, had 2 exits, and led teams across 3 continents. I've also spent the last 2 decades inside the world of hiring and leadership, running those processes, breaking them down, and rebuilding them from scratch for some of the best known companies in the world, including Accenture, Deloitte, and Bridgestone, to name a few. What I'm going to share with you in this video isn't theory, this is lived experience. It's the shifts I had to make myself, the hard-won lessons, if you will, that I had to learn, and the 4 moves I now see that separate managers who become real leaders from the ones who just get better at micromanaging the mundane and staying stuck. We're going to uncover the 4 shifts: identity, safety, humility, and team culture. And by the time we're done, you'll know exactly which one is holding you back. So let's get into it. Here's what nobody tells you when you get promoted into a management position. The thing that actually made you an excellent individual contributor, your skills, your output, your standards, those things actually become your biggest liability. When I moved into managing people, my instinct was to replicate myself, my processes, my standards, my way of doing things, my way of thinking. I'd step in when things weren't going the way I wanted them. I'd micromanage. I'd actively compete with my team to motivate them. I'd take work back from people instead of giving them the opportunity to learn. I'd read every email my staff wrote before they clicked send, and I'd often rewrite them entirely. It was insanity. Soon the office nicknamed my team the Mini-Me's. I thought it was actually quite cute, but little did I know how much damage I was actually doing, and the lessons I would soon learn the hard way. You see, I told myself I was helping. I told myself I was managing standards. What I was actually doing was suffocating the people working with me. One by one, they disengaged, and then they left. My response was to basically double down, micromanage harder, take on more myself. In the end, I was doing the work of 4, maybe 5 people, while also managing the people who were supposed to be actually delivering the results I hired them to deliver. It was a classic vicious cycle. And I was not alone in this. You see, Harvard Business Review data backs this up. 82% of new managers feel unprepared for leadership, not because they lack the skills, but because their definition of success is still about their own output, not their teams. In fact, 60% underperform in the first 2 years as managers for exactly that reason. I was that statistic. Now, stay with me here, because what snapped me out of this vicious cycle wasn't a course or a book. It was one conversation. A senior leader in the business basically pulled me aside. It wasn't a formal review, it wasn't a big moment, just a quiet conversation in the kitchen. He told me that what I was doing wasn't working. It wasn't working for me, and it wasn't working for the team. What's more, it was going to cost me my health and my sanity. Things really needed to change. And then he did something I didn't expect. You see, instead of handing me a list of things to fix, he sat down with me for 15 minutes a week. We'd work through the challenges I was facing, and slowly, week by week, he shifted my thinking from how do I make sure this gets done right to what is standing in the way of my people doing this themselves. That reframe sounds simple, but let me tell you, it's not simple. It's the biggest difference between being a ceiling for your team and being a multiplier for your team. Real leaders don't make themselves indispensable by doing more. They make themselves indispensable by clearing the path and trusting the people they hired to do the job they were hired to do. When I genuinely made that shift, everything changed. The team I built after that was one of the best I'd ever been part of. The systems we built together eventually allowed me to actually step back from the business entirely and sell it. That outcome was only possible because I stopped being the best operator in the room and started being the leader the business actually needed. And that shift didn't happen in isolation. There are actually 3 more moves underneath it that most managers never make. So let me walk you through them. Here's a statistic that should make every manager uncomfortable. Executives are 43% more likely than individual contributors to say that they feel psychologically safe at work. Let that sink in for a moment. Most leaders genuinely believe their team feels safe to push back, to basically raise concerns, to say, I think we're heading in the wrong direction. But in reality, the people in their team feel nothing of the sort. I've sat in hiring debriefs where everyone in the room privately knew the candidate was the wrong hire, wrong fit, shaky on the core competencies, not what the team needed. Yet every single person in that room nodded along anyway. Nobody said it. Nobody wanted to be the one person who threw a spanner in the works. That is not a process problem. That is a climate problem, a culture problem. And the leader created it, usually without even realizing they did so. The real question here isn't whether you say you want honesty. It's what you do the first time someone tells you something you didn't want to hear. Because that is what your team is watching for every single time. That is what they use to decide whether the truth is safe to say out loud or whether it's better to kind of hold it back. But there's more to this. You see, there's a version of humility in leadership that is just good PR. And you've probably seen it, the all-hands speech. I don't have all the answers and I need your input. And then the manager goes away and makes every decision alone, without taking a single thing on board that was said in that meeting. That is not humility, that is performance, and people see straight through it. And research actually very clearly shows this. Leader humility only works when it is genuine. When it is, teams perform better, people speak more freely, and you get fewer of those catastrophic mistakes that come from people staying quiet when they should actually be speaking up. When it is a performance, on the other hand, it backfires and people stop trusting you entirely. The version of leadership humility that actually works isn't about pretending you don't know things. It's actually about being honest enough about your own limits. Honest enough so that people around you feel they can be honest about their own limits. That is a fundamentally different dynamic than the one most leadership cultures are built on. The last shift is actually the deepest one of all, and it's the one that most leadership books don't even talk about. You see, the leaders who build teams that people genuinely want to be part of, where people bring the real energy, the real commitment, and the real discretionary effort, they're not always running the most sophisticated operations or the tightest processes. What they're doing is something different entirely. You see, they're creating a sense of us. Just think about the best leader you've ever worked with or worked for. I'd actually bet that what made them stand out wasn't their process or their structure. It was how they made you feel about the work and about the team that you were part of. Now, that translates directly into how you hire. A manager asks, can you do this job? A leader communicates something bigger than that. They're saying, here's who we are, here's what we stand for, here's what we are building together. And I genuinely want to know if that means something to you. One of those is a transaction. The other is a reason to stay, to care, and to give more than the job description ever asks for. When I finally built a team around that, around a shared identity, not just a shared list of tasks and shared deliverables, that is when the business stopped needing me in every room and in every decision. That is what made it possible to step back, to hand over, and ultimately to sell, to exit. And this is exactly where most managers get stuck. This is why they never cross that line into real leadership. So let's bring all of this together because I want you to actually sit with this for a moment. We're talking about 4 shifts, not 4 skills, not 4 frameworks. It's 4 identity moves that separate the managers who become real leaders from the ones who just get better at micromanaging and staying stuck. Stop being the best operator in the room and start defining what great looks like for the people around you. Stop assuming your team feels safe and start earning that by watching out for how you respond the first time someone tells you something you didn't want to hear. Drop the performance act of humility and replace it with the real thing, because people can tell the difference immediately, and they always could. And stop managing tasks. Start building something your team actually wants to be a part of. I didn't learn any of this in a classroom or a leadership program. I learned it by losing good people, nearly running a business into the ground, and being fortunate enough to have someone in my life pull me aside before it got worse. If you're managing people right now and something feels off, people disengaging, conversations staying surface level, you finding yourself doing work you shouldn't be doing, you're probably still operating the way I was. The good news is, this shift is learnable, and I am living proof of it. If this resonated, subscribe to the channel. I put out content like this every week. Practical, experience-backed, and built for people who are serious about becoming better leaders and building better teams. And if you want to make better people decisions for your team, check out my next video, linked here. See you there.